Hi guys, this is Mr. Tan, and today we're looking at the environmental legislation as well as social and welfare legislation pertaining to employers and their employees. If we look at the environmental bill on the 30th of January 2020, this environmental bill was introduced into Parliament on the 15th of October 2019. And following a general election on the 30th of January 2020, the Environment Bill 2020 sets out how we plan to protect and improve the natural environment in the UK. The legislation itself, was prepared for consultations, with the public on numerous measures, including the environmental governance, clean air strategy, biodiversity, net gain, trees, conservation, convergence, extended producer responsibility for packaging, recycling, and a deposit scheme for drinks, containers, water, and targeting stakeholders with a dialogue to take place on various measures. If we think about the environmental governance, then this was to ensure that the UK continues to drive forward actions to deal with the climate changes as we leave the EU. We're bringing in climate change legislation, including carbon budgets, within the enforcement remit of the Office of Environmental Protection. This was to ensure that there is, no governance gap in relation to climate change legislation. The Office of Environmental Protection will aim to work closely alongside, world-leading committee on climate change and all these issues, ensuring that their individual roles and complement and reinforce each other. We think about the third area, a new direction for resources and waste management. Then, this was to support citizens' efforts to recycle more. The Environment Bill stipulates, its consistent set of materials that must be collected from all households and businesses, including food waste, which was to help make services more consistent across the country. And the bill sets out how government will, mandate weekly collections of food waste for every household subject to, consultation. Number 4 of the environmental bill is improving the air that we breathe. And when we're looking at this, again, this links into manufacturers of cars, and the bill introduces a new power to compel vehicle manufacturers to recall vehicles for environmental non-conformity or failure, and in the case of a manufacturer refuses to issue a voluntary recall. If we're looking at number 5 in terms of delivering sustainable water resources, then the environmental bill introduces additional requirements for water companies planning for future water supplies and wastewater and drainage networks, enabling for more resilient solutions to drought and floodings. And then if we look at restoring and enhancing the nature and green spaces within the community, then we're really saying that the environmental bill introduces a duty to consult, which will give the public the opportunity to understand why a tree is being felled and express any concerns regarding this. The bill also introduces, forestry enforcement measures, which strengthens the Forestry Commission's power to clamp down on illegal tree felling across England, ensuring the Commission has the powers to continue and to protect and maintain the forests. When we think about the last two, chemical regulations and delivering environmental ambition at the local level, well, chemical regulations reach the environmental bill gives the Secretary of State more power to amend 2 pieces of legislation regulating the use of chemicals in the UK: the REACH regulation, evaluation, authorization and restriction of chemicals. And regulation regulates the manufacture, placing in the market and the use of chemicals. And the REACH enforcement regulations 2008 also sets out how the requirements of the REACH regulation are enforced. So this bill gives the development administrators concurrent powers to amend the REACH enforcement regulations, and both pieces of legislation are retained EU law under the European Union Withdrawal Act 2018. And then we look at the last one, which is delivering environmental ambition at the local level. And so the bill really kind of like bolsters the environment role of local leaders by providing additional powers and flexibilities to deliver the action. And so the bill delivers this through improved and increased powers to take more effective action to address local priorities and deliver environmental change, as well as providing more certainty and simplicity for developers through the planning system by mandating biodiversity net gain and ensuring that all new development are enhanced by diversity and help deliver thriving natural spaces for communities. Now, when we think about the implications to businesses in terms of this legislation, well, there are lots of implications. The key criteria for businesses to evaluate compliance needs and associated obligations in terms of plastics, the impact of legal compliance in relation to recycled, contents tax, plastics in terms of extended producer responsibility and PRN from the industry perspective, including, BPF and WRAP wrap packaging, and decarbonisation in packaging itself as well as recycling options for the future, and what our industry is doing to support the net zero ambition. Now, when we think about the legality of the welfare and social responsibilities at work, we're talking about things like workplace temperature, workspace, workplace facilities, work environment, vulnerable workers, and legal duties for welfare at work. And so when we look at these, workplace temperature, we're talking about employees will need to be able to work without discomfort, causing environments that are not too hot or not too cold. Where work requires less physical effort, such as an office, temperature should be at least 16 degrees Celsius, and a risk assessment in terms of clothing, humidity, radiant heat, body activity, duration of exposure, and ambient temperatures. When we're looking at the workspace, then workspaces should provide enough free space for people to access and move freely without risk of injury, slips, trips, and falls. And even if you take into consideration, as a general rule, each person should have a workspace of about 11 cubic meters. For example, if the ceiling height is 2.4 meters, the typical floor space should be 4.6 square meters. And the lighting should be sufficient to enable people to work and move without risk in their safety or health. So the company should try to use natural light, and artificial light is acceptable to boost light levels to provide the local or task lighting. When we think about the workplace facilities, we're talking about eating and drinking facilities, a tap connected directly to a rising main, providing bottled water or water dispensing systems, a tap supplied to a storage system in order to have clean and disinfected, which is disinfected regularly. Toilets and washing facilities are also covered. And then we think about the work environment. All floors must be free from hazards and that can cause slips, trips, or falls. If we think about the responsibility of an employer to reduce the likelihood of accidents where people have their own vehicles being used in terms of cars, vans, and forklifts. So again, as an employer, they would also need to assess the risk of objects falling from different heights to ensure that no one is at risk. Likewise, there are legislation covering the vulnerable workers, new and expectant mothers. You must need to provide facilities for pregnant workers or for mothers to rest where they might need to sit down and lie down for certain periods of time. And then finally, the legal duties regarding Health and Safety at Work Act 1974, which we've already covered in terms of the HSWA. And this states that employers and those in control of workplaces need to ensure the health and safety of all employees and anyone who uses those premises to make sure that they are safe in the working environment that they're working in.